George Washington, born on February 22, 1732, at his family's Pope's Creek estate in Westmoreland County, Virginia, emerged from humble colonial roots to become a towering figure in American history. His father, Augustine Washington, was a prominent member of Virginia's gentry, managing tobacco plantations and ironworks in partnership with the English Principio Company. Augustine also served as a militia member, justice of the peace, and sheriff. Married first to Jane Butler in 1715, who bore him 4 children before her death in 1729. Augustine later wed Mary Johnson Ball in 1731. Mary was born in 1708. Inherited 400 acres after losing her parents early, and was raised by family friend George Eskridge. She named her first son with Augustine George, likely in his honor. Raised as a loyal British subject, young George could scarcely have foreseen leading a rebellion against the crown to establish the United States. His childhood unfolded across Virginia's sprawling farmlands, dotted with plantations and small towns. Though the Washingtons were commoners by British standards, far from King George II's court, Augustine's wealth bolstered by over 10,000 acres, and slave labor placed them among Virginia's elite. Plantation life afforded leisure for fox hunts, horse races, and social gatherings. Augustine's frequent moves to oversee his properties shaped an unstable childhood for George. With relocations to Little Hunting Creek in 1735 and Ferry Farm near Fredericksburg in 1738, from Ferry Farm, George observed ships laden with tobacco and iron, fueling early industrial growth and Virginia's prosperity. George's half-brother Lawrence, 14 years his senior, profoundly influenced him. Educated at Appleby Grammar School, Lawrence served as a captain in the 1739 War of Jenkins' Ear, joining Admiral Edward Vernon's failed assault on the Spanish port of Cartagena. Though he remained aboard ship, Lawrence's tales of service inspired George. After managing Little Hunting Creek, Lawrence renamed it Mount Vernon in Vernon's honor. Augustine's death in 1743, when George was 11, left him Ferry Farm under his mother Mary's strict oversight. Their formal, distant relationship, evident in George's letters addressing her as honored madam, pushed him to seek refuge with Lawrence at Mount Vernon. George's early education was rudimentary, likely limited to basic mathematics and self-taught business principles. As a teenager, he devoured history, philosophy, and fiction, and excelled in outdoor pursuits like swimming and horseback riding, skills later vital to his military career. He later lamented missing a classical education in French, Latin, and Greek, feeling intellectually outshone by peers like John Adams and Thomas Jefferson. Yet his practical intelligence turned ideas into action. Lawrence's connections, including his marriage to Anne Fairfax of the land-rich Fairfax family, opened doors for George. In 1746, Lawrence and Colonel William Fairfax planned to enlist George in the Royal Navy, but Mary vetoed the idea. Instead, at 15, George pursued surveying, a profitable trade, amid westward expansion. By 1748, he worked for the Fairfaxes, mapping their vast estates, and by age 20, he owned over 2,000 acres. Lawrence's death from tuberculosis in 1752 left Mount Vernon to George, who leased it from an appointed adjutant general of Virginia's militia in 1753 at age 21. Major Washington embarked on a pivotal mission that November, crossing the Alleghenies to warn French forces to vacate the Ohio country. His diligent diplomacy and intelligence gathering informed British strategy, earning him a role in the 1754 expedition to build a fort at the Ohio River's forks. Promoted to lieutenant colonel, he led 160 men but learned the French had seized the site, renaming it Fort Duquesne. On May 28, 1754, Washington's forces ambushed a French detachment, sparking a skirmish that killed a French officer and ignited an international incident. Though praised in the colonies, London deemed him reckless. After building Fort Necessity, Washington ignored Native American allies' advice, leading to a crushing defeat on July 3, 1754. The loss taught him the value of mobility and defensible positions. In 1755, Washington joined General Edward Braddock's campaign against Fort Duquesne as an aide-de-camp. Braddock's disdain for colonial troops mirrored British attitudes, but Washington's bravery during the July 9th ambush surviving, as 2 horses were shot from under him, earned him respect. Appointed commander of Virginia's forces, he struggled with desertions, and in 1757 fell gravely ill, returning to Mount Vernon. In 1758, he married Martha Dandridge Custis, a wealthy widow whose warmth contrasted with Mary's austerity. That year, Washington won election to the Virginia House of Burgesses and led 2,500 men to capture Fort Duquesne, which the French abandoned. Renamed Fort Pitt, it marked his final action in the French and Indian War. Settling at Mount Vernon, Washington's marriage to Martha made him one of Virginia's wealthiest landowners. His tobacco ventures, reliant on over 600 slaves, faltered due to weather and market volatility, deepening his debts to London creditors. Though he treated slaves more humanely than peers, refusing to sell them to preserve families, he remained complicit in slavery's brutality. The 1763 British victory in the French and Indian War, coupled with new taxes like the 1765 Stamp Act, fueled colonial resentment. Initially moderate, supported boycotts, and by 1769, backed non-importation policies in the House of Burgesses, asserting Virginia's sole right to tax its citizens. The 1773 Boston Tea Party and Britain's intolerable acts radicalized him further, leading to the 1774 Fairfax Resolves, co-drafted with George Mason, declaring taxation inseparable from representation. Elected to the First Continental Congress in 1774. Washington's military expertise and measured speeches positioned him as a leading candidate for commander-in-chief. On June 16, 1775, the Second Continental Congress appointed him head of the Continental Army. Arriving in Boston, he found 14,000 poorly equipped men. His ban on black soldiers was reversed after British offers of freedom to enslaved recruits, allowing free blacks to join. Martha's presence during harsh winters bolstered morale. In March 1776, Washington's strategic placement of cannon on Dorchester Heights forced the British to evacuate Boston. However, defending New York in August 1776 led to devastating losses at Long Island and Manhattan, exposing his tactical inexperience. His daring Christmas 1776 crossing of the Delaware River and victories at Trenton and Princeton restored morale, showcasing his audacity. In 1777, Washington's defeat at Brandywine allowed the British to occupy Philadelphia. His failed night attack at Germantown further highlighted his limitations. But Horatio Gates' victory at Saratoga bolstered the American cause, securing French alliance in 1778 at Valley Forge. Washington endured a brutal winter, aided by Martha and Prussian officer Friedrich von Steuben, whose drills transformed the army. The 1778 Battle of Monmouth saw Washington rally troops after Charles Lee's retreat, securing his leadership. From 1778 to 1781, Washington avoided major battles, focusing on smaller operations while French support grew. In 1781, he and French commander Rochambeau besieged Cornwallis at Yorktown, forcing his surrender on October 19th, effectively ending the war. Peace terms in 1783 recognized U.S. independence. Resigning his commission in December 1783, Washington returned to Mount Vernon, wary of resembling a monarch. His opposition to slavery grew, but economic dependence deterred action. In 1787, he presided over the Constitutional Convention, brokering compromises on representation in slavery. Unanimously elected president in 1789, he shaped the executive branch with a cabinet including Hamilton, Jefferson, Knox, and Randolph. Hamilton's financial plans, including a national bank, sparked tensions with Jefferson, reflecting divides between Federalists and Republicans. Washington's neutrality in the 1793 Anglo-French War and support for the 1795 Jay Treaty drew criticism, but preserved peace. Retiring in 1797 after 2 terms, he set a precedent for democratic transitions. In 1798, he briefly led the army amid tensions with France. On December 14, 1799, Washington died after a snowstorm-induced illness. His will freed his slaves upon Martha's death, enacted in 1801. What are your thoughts on George Washington? Was he a brilliant general whose leadership turned a fledgling army into a force capable of defeating Britain? And a pragmatic statesman who unified a fragile nation? Or was he an overrated commander reliant on allies and subordinates, with a political legacy shaped by others' brilliance? Share your views in the comments, and thank you for watching.